There has never been a worse time in history to be a Russian soldier. It's not just because tens of thousands of them are being killed and wounded every month, nor is it only because they're treated like cannon fodder by their commanders, sent out on suicide mission assaults, without adequate training, reliable equipment, or any armor to protect them. It's because every single second of their lives is a waking nightmare. A nightmare in which terror and death await around every corner, where hidden threats can end a life in an instant, and where even soldiers' own allies and commanders can turn against them, torturing or even killing those who dare defy a single order. Faced with such a myriad of menaces, many of these soldiers count themselves lucky to simply make it to the end of each day still in one piece. Like their Ukrainian counterparts, thousands of them dream of a day when the war is over and done with, when they can return to their homes to see their friends and families once more. But they know that every minute they spend on the front lines is fraught with peril, with enemy drones, artillery, and assault squads never far away. Faced with the choice between near certain death and the chance to live another day, increasing numbers of these Russian soldiers make the daring decision to flee the front lines. Mikhail Rodionov was one of them. In an interview with United 24 Media, Rodionov admits he joined the Russian army in order to avoid a prison sentence. It's not an unfamiliar story. Many Russian men from poor or troubled backgrounds may end up committing petty crimes in their homelands, and since the war began, many of those arrested are offered a choice: either spend time behind bars or sign up and fight in Ukraine. Rodionov, like so many before him, was tempted by the latter. Offered a military contract and promised that he would serve in the rear, digging trenches rather than being thrown into the fires of the front lines, he signed on the dotted line. He had no idea he'd been deceived. He thought he'd be safe, far from the firefights of the front, spending his days doing manual labor, which may be exhausting but at least didn't involve putting his life on the line. At first, that's how it started. Rodionov was indeed tasked with digging out trenches and fortifications, but soon found himself given additional tasks, much more dangerous tasks, like evacuating wounded soldiers or dragging dead bodies out from forward positions. He spent a year and a half doing this work before a much more terrifying message came through. You're going on an assault. This was not what Rodionov signed up for, but there was no turning back now. He and his partner underwent what Rodionov describes as absurd training, hastily shown how to use electric scooters and civilian navigation apps to plan their attack. Afterwards, they were shown a simple photograph of a ruined building near the Ukrainian village of Petropavlivka, not far from Kupiansk in the Kharkiv region, and ordered to reach that building and defend it. Rodionov knew the area well. He'd spent time there, recovering many of his fallen comrades, former assault team members who had barely managed to advance a single kilometer before being killed. The building Rodionov and his partner were headed to was around 7 kilometers, 4.5 miles, away from them. It didn't take them long to come to the obvious conclusion. They had no chance of reaching that building, let alone defending it. This was a suicide mission. Rodionov, like countless other Russian men before him, was being dispatched to his doom. It's a similar story up and down the hundreds of miles of front lines. Time and again, Russia's commanders stubbornly persist with their utterly unsustainable meat grinder strategy, throwing hundreds and thousands of men towards fortified Ukrainian positions, knowing that almost all of them will either be wounded or killed, all in a desperate attempt to claim a few more slivers of worthless territory, all so that those same commanders can report back to their president, Vladimir Putin, that the war is going well. But Rodionov wasn't willing to be just another statistic, another name on the increasingly long list of Russian casualties. He and his partner decided to take their lives into their own hands and flee. They nearly made it too, but were caught a mere 7.5 miles, 12 kilometers, from the Russian border by a group of Chechens, as Rodionov reports. They beat us and then handed us over to the military police. They kept us in a basement and beat us several more times. At night, someone with the call sign Volchara arrived and sent me to a headquarters in Vysok, in the Luhansk region. There, they asked me, "Will you go on an assault?" I explained that I was afraid and that my health was very poor. Then they sent me to a man with the call sign Chelyaba and ordered him to have a preventive conversation with me. During that preventive conversation, Rodionov was bound and tortured with electric shocks for 2 whole hours before finally relenting and agreeing to go on the assault. But his nightmare wasn't over. At a checkpoint, other Russian soldiers decided to extort their young comrade. They realized that Rodionov must have accumulated a reasonable amount of money on his bank card, having spent so much time in military service without having the chance to spend any of it. So, they asked him to buy them a motorcycle. Frightened of what would happen if he refused, Rodionov agreed. Then the soldiers pushed further. Claiming that the weather was turning, they said they now needed an ATV instead. Again, Rodionov agreed. He was escorted to an ATM, where he expected to withdraw the money and hand it over to the men. But at the checkpoint, they demanded that he reveal his PIN code. And when he refused, another grim surprise awaited him. He was promptly rushed back to Chelyaba's torture chamber. There he was beaten all over again, bound and tortured with electric shocks for another 2 hours. But, unlike the first time, he wasn't questioned or given any option to end his suffering. He was simply hurt, over and over, even having his cheek pierced with a pair of scissors at one stage. Only then did Chelyaba at last ask for his PIN code. Unable to withstand any additional pain and realizing he had no other option, Rodionov relented. Sometime after that, he was ordered to get ready for a fresh assault. He wasn't given any information about where he was headed or which unit he was assigned to, but none of that mattered. Rodionov knew that any front-line assault, no matter where it was or who it was with, was nothing but a death sentence. So, despite having failed and suffered the consequences once before, he decided to try to flee again. Rather than packing his backpack with ammunition and weapons, he packed water and a few cans of food and ran for his life. Tragically, he was caught all over again, this time near the settlement of Arapivka in the Luhansk region of eastern Ukraine. He was promptly taken to another settlement, where he was once more touched with electric shocks, simply because he couldn't tell the soldiers there which unit he had attempted to escape from. After that, much to Rodionov's horror, he found himself face to face with his tormentor for the 3rd time. The Russian military police decided to send him back to Chelyaba, who once more tied him up and tortured him. Then they just threw me, bound, onto the ground outside. Chelyaba would come out from time to time, smoke and flick cigarette butts at me. He said that if I so much as moved, the beatings would continue. At one point, some colonel with the call sign Matros came over, stepped over me and asked, "What's this here?" He went into Chelyaba's room. They talked. The colonel came back out, stepped over me again, and simply walked away. The next day, Rodionov was taken to a unit, the 1st Guards Tank Regiment to be precise, to undertake assault training. He spent 2 days being instructed on how to run up to Ukrainian fortifications and throw anti-tank mines inside. After that, he was assigned to a new group and ordered out on yet another assault. And this time, he was told in no uncertain terms, "If you attempt to flee again, you will be shot." Still, Clinging on to the chance at survival and some sort of future, Rodionov boldly hatched a third and final escape attempt. Just before the assault began, he asked to go to the toilet, but instead ran towards the Ukrainian positions, where he surrendered and was taken into captivity. He may be a prisoner, but at least he's alive, which cannot be said for countless others. Quick side note, you're watching The Military Show, and if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. Having seen and endured the horrors of war firsthand, Rodionov has a message for any of his fellow countrymen thinking of taking up arms and joining the fight. To all Russian soldiers, I say this: don't believe the army. Coming back alive is almost impossible. Don't go to war, Russians. Don't invade other people's countries. This is not our land. Stay home. Work in factories. Even if you are facing a prison sentence, serve your time, believe me. 10 years behind bars is better than the army. There is no human treatment there. You won't see your pay either. They simply take it away. Use your head. Don't go to war. War is death. Hopefully, some Russians who are still hesitating about signing up and joining this disastrous campaign may hear and heed that fateful warning. For others, however, it's already much too late. Countless men of varying ages have either volunteered to fight in Ukraine or felt that they have no other choice, seeing it as the only way to earn a decent wage, provide for their families, or escape the likes of imprisonment or deportation. Many were fooled by the media or fell into the trap of believing recruiters' lies. They thought they'd serve 6 to 12 months in a relatively safe location before heading home and enjoying the sign-up bonus and salary they'd earned. Many believed that the war would be over quickly, or that Russia was in the ascendancy, easily rolling over Ukraine's defenses and making gains in great quantities. Then, they arrived at the front lines. They saw the harsh reality of this war. They realized what little chance they had of making it out alive, understanding, at last, that they would not be treated as human beings by those higher up the food chain, but as disposable pieces of meat, thrown into the firing lines on pointless, suicidal assaults. Many of those soldiers feel they have no other option but to silently and sadly accept their fate, following the orders of their commanding officers and marching directly to their deaths, with only the vague hope that they might suffer non-fatal injuries that allow them to be sent back home. Some, however, go the same way as Rodionov, taking the brave but risky choice of disobeying orders or daring to flee their units. Some succeed. Those who are caught, however, can be subject to some terrible punishments for their actions. Indeed, numerous media outlets, including the Daily Mail, have shared reports of Russian commanders beating, humiliating, starving, and abusing their own troops in other ways, with some even killing soldiers who refuse to do exactly as they're told. Evidence provided by the Russian-language Telegram channel Trick Question includes anonymous videos from soldiers of Russia's 132nd and 60th Brigades, as well as other units. These videos demonstrate the horrific and sadistic lengths some Russian officers will resort to in order to keep their men in line. One clip, for example, shows two half-naked men bound to a tree and ordered to bark like dogs as their commander taunts and even urinates on them while proudly stating, "These are our dogs who ran away from us, but we caught them." Another clip shows a soldier who has been imprisoned in a small box, with only his head exposed, as a commander taunts him with food, saying, "Are you hungry? You're going to die there, you know." Many soldiers also report being electrocuted or forcibly tattooed for defying orders or daring to escape. Often, they're also denied basic necessities like food and water, and resort to desperate measures like drinking from puddles or looting corpses to find odd scraps of food wherever they can. And punishments aren't just dished out to those who refuse to go on assaults or try to escape. Even the simplest of things, like being found in possession of a smartphone, can be enough to earn a soldier a death sentence. Those who refuse to extend their contracts with the army, too, are often signed up for suicidal assaults, effectively eliminating any hope they might have had of ever going home. Often, to ensure they have absolutely no chance of making it out alive, these soldiers are ordered to march on Ukrainian positions while suffering terrible injuries or without any weapons to defend themselves. Extortion is common too. Commanding officers will routinely shake down the troops under their command, demanding they hand over their bank cards or wire cash to the commander's accounts, with those who refuse being tortured or killed. One former Army medic interviewed by the BBC shared his first-hand experience of this behavior, stating, "I saw the bodies of 20 men I knew, lying in a pit after being executed by their own officers, after their money was confiscated. I remember one of them screaming, 'Don't shoot, I'll do anything,' but he zeroed them anyway. It's not a problem to write off someone, you just make up a report. And the atrocities don't end there. There have even been reports and video evidence of Russian soldiers being pitted against one another like dogs. One clip, for example, shows a pair of shirtless men thrown into a pit before the commander informs them, 'Here's the deal. Whoever kills the other first gets to leave the pit.' The subsequent fight lasted barely a couple of minutes, with the older soldier strangling his compatriot to death. These aren't one-off incidents or rarities. They're surprisingly common across the Russian military, with expert analyst Keir Giles telling reports it is a systemic issue. The Russian army reflects the society from which it's drawn, and that's a society in which violence, extortion, and corruption are endemic. We shouldn't be surprised when these behaviors are carried forward and displayed, whether it's against the people that the Russian army conquers or to their own people, because the social structure within Russia has always been built upon anybody that has even a tiny amount of power exploiting it to the greatest extent possible. And it's not just Russians suffering like this. The Kremlin has also made a point of targeting migrant workers from other parts of the world, like Africa and South Asia, fooling them into signing military contracts and sending them straight to the most dangerous locations. There, often without understanding how or why they've been sent to these places, these people are used as cannon fodder, regardless of their physical capacities, as Giles explains. If your only purpose is to be a bullet sponge, it doesn't matter if you're walking, on crutches, or already injured, you'll still fulfill your purpose. And even if some soldiers survive the awful treatment imposed upon them by their commanding officers, they still have to contend with their opponents, the Ukrainian military, who continue to devise increasingly surprising and ingenious ways of eliminating their enemies. A recent report, for example, revealed that covert operatives working for Kyiv hid tiny explosive devices inside heated shoe insoles, which were then sent out to Russian military units. Each of the insoles contained up to 1.5 grams of explosives, and there were reportedly tens of thousands of them sent out to Russian troops. A truck carrying around 500 of these insoles was intercepted by the Russians, with the Kremlin's intelligence agency, the FSB, proudly boasting that its enemies' plans had been foiled. In reality, however, that truck was only one of many. According to Ukrainian officials, thousands more of these explosive insoles made it to their intended destinations and did their job. A similar incident was also reported in February 2025, when a batch of FPV drone goggles sent to Russian units was found to have been sabotaged by Ukrainian operatives. The goggles had been fitted with improvised explosive devices, designed to detonate while the goggles were being worn, ending enemy soldiers' lives in the blink of an eye. So, not only do Russian troops face the threats of suicide missions and commanders who treat them like insects, but they can't even trust the equipment they're given to defend themselves, as anything from their shoes to their goggles to their rifles may have secretly been tampered with and turned into a death trap. Their lives are riddled with fear, danger, and misery. Death can and does come for them at any time, and in a myriad of hellish and inescapable ways. And the longer this war goes on, the more lives will be lost. Ukraine, too, does and will continue to lose soldiers, but at least has commanders who value their lives, arm them correctly, and treat them with respect. Kiev's military is also constantly seeking out new ways to minimize casualties by making use of innovative technologies, and even recently deployed Terminator-style humanoid robots in frontline firefights, which you can learn all about in this video. Alternatively, check out this video for a closer look at the staggering amount of losses Russia has suffered and why its army is on a one-way path to utter oblivion. Make sure to subscribe to the Military Show for more tactical breakdowns, insights, and news reports you won't want to miss.